Hello, everybody. This is Tommy's Outdoors 49, and our guest today is a young adventure junkie, Tomás McIntyre. Tom was already our guest in episode 16 when we talked about his cycle through United States. And at that time, he was planning another adventure, and he was planning to cycle from Cairo, Egypt, down to Cape Town, South Africa. And he did it. Now he's back, and I'm absolutely stoked to have him on the podcast again and talk with Tom about his great adventure. So we go into a lot of detail, and we tracking Tom from the start of his trip down to the very finish of his trip. And Tom will share with us his thoughts, what he's seen, what he experienced. So it's another great adventure episode. If you're into cycling, if you're into traveling to exotic countries, or maybe you love Africa, this is definitely an episode that you will enjoy. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Tomás McIntyre. Welcome back.
Yeah, we were saying it's about a year when I was last on.
Yes. So we were talking then about your adventure when you were cycling through United States, and you were only saying that I'm planning that great trip down the length of Africa, and I think at the time you had also a lot of questions in your mind rather than answers, and here you are 1 year later, done. You did it. You cycled right from Egypt to South Africa.
Yeah, happy to be back in one piece. Surprised that I managed to get through it. Tough journey, but yeah, just settling back into, I suppose, normal life again. A bit up and down, but it's improving. It's getting there now. So
there was first thing I was asking myself, and it was probably first question that I wanted to ask, like, how does it feel? I mean, like, now how many months since you're back?
Just over a month, I think.
Just over a month since you're back.
Yeah.
So it's fairly fresh. But I mean, is it feeling like something is missing because you were like in this mode of traveling for so long, and I would imagine like when you back into your like a normal life, it's like, do you have a feeling something is missing? Something is like,
Yeah, I suppose that's just that day-to-day sensation of adventurement, just going from new place to new place every day, seeing new things, meeting new people, learning new things, being someplace different at the end of every day, and then you're back home and you're back into the same bed, same routine, same family, same friends. So you kind of just lose that thrill of adventurement. But look, I mean, it's hard to sustain that lifestyle every day for the rest of your life. So that's why they're called adventures. You do them, you come home, you go again, you come home, and until you stop doing them, really. And I suppose real life begins to take over, and you kind of just don't have the free time to do it anymore. But no, look, I mean, I'm happy I'm home. It's good to be home.
I bet you, because that must be like, I was thinking that must be that weird thing, because obviously you were missing home, and I'm back home. But then you kind of saying like, it's this something is. Do you still feel it, or are you kind of back into a normal mode now?
Yeah, getting back into it now. Just kind of came home and met up with friends and stuff like that, family, etc., and then just kind of went straight back into work because I just wanted to keep myself as busy as possible. Because I found that when I wasn't busy, that's when kind of the post-trip blues would kick in. And I'd find myself getting down very quickly and missing Africa. But I knew that was going to happen because the same happened when I came home from America a few years ago. At least, thankfully, this time I came home and it was summertime, and I knew that there was going to be people around, enough to keep me busy, back into work and stuff like that. And I applied for college last week.
Oh yeah, actually, congratulations, mate.
Yeah,
You were
yeah,
accepted. Wow.
yeah. Applied Monday and I got accepted Wednesday, which was pretty quick for a master's in international relations up in Dublin. So at least I have something to look forward to now, because I was stuck in a bit of a limbo.
Right.
You know, thinking, do I stay at home for the winter? Do I go on another trip? Am I going back to college? Am I going to focus on work? Maybe because I do cycling tours with my uncle, and like, I could have stayed around and maybe develop that a bit more. But yeah, I decided to go back to school again. So
yeah, very good.
So
Very
at least
good.
that'll keep me tied down for a year, and just we'll see after that then.
And then another trip, right?
Yeah, no, I don't know, probably not. They take a lot out of you mentally, physically, emotionally. So
it's interesting that because at one end, like you said, it takes a lot physically and mentally, but then you also said you're actually missing it when you're back.
It's mixed feelings really. Some days you miss it, and other days you're glad it's over.
Yes,
but look, I'll keep traveling, but I don't have to keep traveling the way that I'm doing at the moment, going on these gigantic bike rides. I can just backpack or something less stressful next time, maybe, or just go on a normal trip to Europe or something like that. That's perfectly acceptable as well.
Yes.
So I think these crazy bike rides, or else you can just do shorter bike rides. I don't need to go for, like, I was in Africa for 7 months. I don't need to go for 7 months next time. You can. I've done smaller trips, like America was 7 weeks. I've done a couple of week-long trips to Spain. You can do just regular trips like that as well.
So is it part of you that says, like, well, it was a little bit too much?
A bit, I think, yeah. I mean, I'm stubborn, so although there was a few times I wanted to kind of tap out and finish up in Africa, the goal was always Cape Town. No matter if I had to, cycle, run or crawl, that was always the main goal, was get to Cape Town. So, but yeah, no, look, it did take a lot out of me. It was a great trip, loved it, but it was tough mentally, physically, emotionally, but got there in the end, and I'm happy that I got there. And we were all kind of looking at your updates and saying, like, what Tom is up today, and he's here, like, so that was great. So okay, so you're saying that perhaps it took, like, was there any moment any moment where you kind of got in the groove and you just keep going? Because this is how at least impression that I had by following your updates, that initially it was a little bit up and down, and was like, it was great, and there was a little bit rougher moments, and then probably, well, I don't know, this is my impression, like, from some point in time it seemed like you've been solidly like, yeah, I'm doing that. It was like day and another day and another day. Was that just my impression over your updates, or whether it was like that at some point it was like, yeah, I'm just going and doing this? Yeah, no, it definitely was. I mean, the up and downs kind of started straight away. I mean, the guy I was staying with in Cairo, his name was Mustafa. He put me up for a week. His wife is from Waterford. She's Irish, and he's a local Egyptian, but he comes to Ireland quite often. But I spent a week with him, and the day I left him, the first day of the cycle, I cried, because I knew that, this is it now. This is... I'm actually doing this. Like, I enjoyed his company for the week. I got really attached to him. We still stay in contact now. And then I just knew that from there on, that was it. That was kind of, that was just going to be the trend for the trip. You're going to meet people, you're going to attach yourself to them, enjoy their company, and then you're going to leave them to go back out on the bike by yourself. And I mean, I live in a pub at home, so I'm used to having people around all the time. Like, we live above the bar, so anytime I want company, I just go downstairs. So to be going from a lifestyle where you're constantly around people to being in Africa, and within a week you're cycling inside, or within, I think it was 2 weeks, you're cycling inside the Sahara Desert all by yourself. It's just, you're thrown from one world into another, and it's like the polar opposite, really, coming from a small village to being thrown into the depthness of the gigantic Sahara Desert. But look, there were the challenges that were ahead of me, and I mean, you can only play with what's ahead of you. So
you had a hard moment straight away, right off the bat.
Yeah, but I don't know. I mean, some people wouldn't see them as being hard. Maybe I'm just soft. mentally
No, you're
weak.
not.
I don't know. You see, this is it.
I
But
can
maybe
tell you that
was-
you just cycled,
Yeah.
through the whole Africa on your own on the bike. So that's not what
Yeah.
soft people do.
I don't
I
know.
can guarantee you, like
Yeah.
it's not what soft people do.
I've never cried so much in my life out there, but then again, maybe you just needed these breakdowns to get through it. Because I don't know. I just thought that all these crying sessions were just to make me stronger
Yeah.
and better and mentally tougher, and I think that's what worked out in the end. But then again, I mean, I had my biggest breakdown came in Zambia, and after that, then I don't think I cried after. I think when I finished in Cape Town, I cried when I saw Table Mountain, but that was it. Then just I think I had there was a build up to this big mental crack, and it took I think nearly 5.5 months for it to happen. But I knew it was going to happen at some stage because I knew for me to finish the trip, I'd have to mentally crack and kind of hit rock bottom. And that I wanted that to happen because I was like, if I can hit rock bottom out here all by myself, then, and if I can pick up the pieces and continue on and finish, then at least anytime I come to life challenges, that I know that I've hit rock bottom, and that I know I can get past it. That right, I hit rock bottom in the middle of nowhere in Zambia, and I picked up the pieces and got through it. And if I can do that again with proper support from family, friends, whenever it'll happen again, at least I'll be at home, or ideally at home, or a better network around me, as in with people actually around me, not just calling home that evening being like, oh well, this happened today.
Yeah, it's incredible, and it's incredibly mature and profound what you're saying, about the mental aspect of it. Have you have any discussions about with like psychologists or anyone before that trip, since you knew that it's gonna happen? Did you prepare yourself in any way for this?
No, like I said, I just wanted it to happen because I knew that if all these breakdowns weren't happening, that it was just too easy, that it wasn't challenging. I just really wanted a life challenge that would kind of get me out of my comfort zone and to put me probably in a scenario that I never expected myself to be in. And I think that's when you kind of truly test yourself, is when you're vulnerable, isolated, and you feel down and you want to quit. That's when you just kind of find the inner strength inside you to kind of crawl out of whatever hole that you've kind of got yourself into, whether it was because of physical reasons or in my case mental reasons. But I'm just delighted I stuck with it, because like I said, like in Zambia, I had decided to quit. I was done and dusted. That morning I just couldn't stop crying for 2 hours, climbing up this hill, and when I got to the top I just broke down at the side of the road. And I remember I texted into my family group chat, but thankfully they were all asleep because I texted in early in the morning saying that I was done. I was going to get to Lusaka, take a bit of time out and just fly home whenever I felt ready to go home. But just whatever happened, like I said.
Was it like loneliness that got to you?
There was a few different reasons, I suppose. Loneliness was one of them. I think just the fact that I've been on the road 5 months, and like I said, you're meeting people, you're getting attached, you're living off your bike. You can't really settle anywhere because I spent like a week in one place and maybe a few days in another place when I felt that I needed some days off. And I wasn't stuck to any strict deadline that I had to keep going. If I needed time off, I took the time off that I needed, because I knew that's something else that you need to do. Is that when you're struggling, just take a step back and just kind of get yourself right again and to continue on.
Wow.
But look, I got through it in the end, and I suppose at least it'll set me up now for future life challenges. That
Wow, no,
if I got through that by myself, that I'll be ready for anything else the world threw at me.
Absolutely, and look, this is just awesome what you said, and I must say, quite incredible that you almost expected that that was something that it's like a really archetypical story, that you're going into the place that is the darkest and the scariest, and it's gonna happen, but you still go there to face that, and you've just done it. It's incredible. Wow. Okay, listen, so for people who haven't heard the previous episode, what made you to do that? Like, was that what we just said the reason you wanted to do that? You want to challenge yourself, or was that like something that you discovered as you were thinking about it and and preparing for it? Was it the initial thought that made you to do that cycle?
Yeah, it was one of the reasons. I suppose just a love for traveling as well. I mean, look, Africa in today's world, the perception we have is this crazy, dangerous place, unlawful, famine, civil war, people just rampaging around, killing each other all day, night. And I just I knew it wasn't like that because I've spoken to people who've been out there and they all just describe it as this wonderful place, full of beauty, just the nicest people you'll meet. So, and then like I love cycling, and like I said, like we spoke about before, I'd done the America trip before, and I mean that was a great trip, but I don't think it was what I was looking for. So I wanted, and then this leads into the other reason, I just wanted to do kind of something just stupid and crazy, really. And I just thought that, you know, you could obviously go out there and backpack and travel around and fly from whatever country to country I wanted to see, but I was like, it would be very ballsy to cycle it from top to bottom. I'd never been to Africa before. I'd just spoken to people about it, but I kind of looked into it and it looked reasonably safe to do it. And there was just kind of I wouldn't say like a route or network, but the route that I had looked at, it seemed to be the safest one to do. Now, there was one or two countries that things could kick off in, and one of the countries, Ethiopia, tends to kick off, but got through it safely. But yeah, just Africa is just this magical place.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt. And you witness like how it really is, what you say, like rather than what people are feeding others in the news. You actually being there and you talked with regular folks and you could see how it actually is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously you met the folks in the city, but I think it's the countryside where you truly see a country when you get off the beaten track and find the small villages and the small towns, and you meet the authentic local people. Yeah. And they tell you what it's really like. They tell you straight up. But they're also, you know, the nicest people I've ever met. They'd put their life on the line for you, really. They'd always make sure you were doing okay, make sure you had food, water, that you knew that you were safe, and that if there's any issue you could come to them, etc. And they're always chatty, always, I suppose, keen to learn about Ireland as well, because I'd show them pictures of here, and they'd show me pictures of, you know, they will say if they didn't live in the village directly, but out further in the countryside, they'd show me pictures of their homes there, and they'd talk about their families, and you kind of just, you'd learn from them and they'd learn from you, and it was just, for me, it was intriguing, and for them, extremely intriguing as well. So,
so a question I asked you before, I remember, was like, how are you gonna solve the problem with all those different languages? What language are you gonna speak with those people? And at the time, you didn't know.
Yeah.
Now, surely you know. So, would you share that with us? How did that work? Because I presume like you go into the village in Zambia. Like, are people speaking English there?
Not all of them would, but you'd be surprised. So some of these countries were ex-British colonies, so English would still be widely spoken and still taught in school. So you'd always find a couple of teachers, the English teachers, or else they'd find you. So when you come into these villages, in the countryside especially, as soon as you'd cycle in, everyone in the village would be out to see you, because
that not happen too often.
No, not obviously in Europe or America or even Asia anymore, but Africa, I suppose, just for them to see what they call a Mzungu, a white person on a bicycle in their village. I mean, it's exciting for them, because these, these local people, they don't have the iPhones we have now. They don't have laptops and direct access to internet. So there, I suppose, they don't have a big idea of the outside world, we'll say. So when they see you come in on the bicycle, A, they've known you come from afar. B, they know that you're from outside of, we'll say, because like I'd had an Irish tap on, so they'd know I was from Ireland, and they'd obviously know Ireland wasn't in Africa. So they'd all come running out, greeting you, waving, asking how you are. That's the ones with English, but some of them would only have very basic English. They'd have like, hi, how are you, things like that. But then you'd always have the ones with proper English as well, who'd be able to speak.
So overall, that wasn't a big problem?
Not so much. So we'd say Sudan and Ethiopia was more difficult, definitely. But I learned a few words of Arabic and a few words of Amharic.
Oh, okay.
Just enough to get by on.
Yes.
So we'll say, I forget the words now, but I'd learned certain words for food because, especially Sudan, it's just kind of the same food you'd get outside of the major towns and cities. So you'd get this thing called fool and then eggs. So I'd learned the Arabic word for eggs or bread. And then if you went into like we'll say these roadside truck stops, you'd just, if they didn't have English, you'd just say the word for eggs or bread or water or tea. And at least they'd know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Or else what you do, cheekily enough, you'd never think of doing it here in the Western world, but you'd walk into their kitchen area and you'd literally open up the lids of the pots and pans around the kitchen and you'd just pint of what you wanted. And they'd have no hassle with that. They wouldn't give out to you for coming in. Usually you'd just tell them that you'd start pinting and then they'd kind of usher you in. They'd kind of motion for you to come in and they'd hand you a plate and you just kind of picked out whatever and then you just paid him whatever money he wanted for the food and stuff like that. So, but of course you wouldn't walk into a restaurant in Killarney or Dublin or any place like that.
No, don't try that.
Go into the chefs.
Don't try that at home.
Exactly, yeah. But out there, I did it often, but most of the time they just laugh. They just find it hilarious, just
the guy showed up on the bike and he's just hungry. I'm not surprised he's hungry.
Who just couldn't translate or who couldn't get through to the owner and just instead walked in and played at his own food and just quietly paid and sat outside eating and maybe went back for seconds and thirds.
Oh God, that's funny. So what countries you traveled through? You started in Egypt.
Yeah,
in Cairo, Egypt.
Yeah, in Cairo. Yeah, so I went through 11 different countries. So I started in Egypt, made my way south through Sudan, Ethiopia. There was ethnic conflicts in Ethiopia, so I flew to Uganda, and then from Uganda into Kenya, Tanzania, Malawi, Zambia, into Botswana, and then across to Namibia, and then into South Africa. So there was a north to south crossing, and then from east coast to west coast, from Tanzania to the coast of South Africa as well.
Yeah,
hitting the west coast. So you kind of traversed across the southern part of Africa from east to west as well.
Right. So can we go just through each of these countries, like in a chronological order, and what you remember? What was the highlights and what was the low points in each country?
Yeah, absolutely. So it started in Egypt. So I suppose high points of Egypt, locals again. This will be one of the high points for every country, really. Locals were lovely. Food was nice. The food was spicy food. So the guy, Mustafa, the guy I was staying with at the start, he told me that if you don't get sick from the Egyptian spicy food, that you shouldn't get sick from any food you eat in Africa.
Wow.
Because this food you can get it spicy, but thankfully I have a keen eye for spicy food. I'm just trying to remember what else now. The tea was lovely. Bad coffee in Egypt, but nice tea. So they have a big tea culture. Chai, it's called.
Right.
So you get these small little kind of glass cups, and then
it's a Russian word for tea, chai.
Chai.
That's maybe it's more universal than just Russian word.
Yeah, it's the same in Egypt, Sudan, and Ethiopia as well. But most countries wouldn't understand chai.
Right. What's the Chinese for chai? Maybe that's where it comes from.
Chai, yeah. And then coffee is just coffee. Yeah. Spelled differently, of course, but just coffee. The pyramids. The Great Pyramids of Giza, all the temples.
So that's interesting because like you said, you didn't have like a time. You did not try to, do it in like 80 days or something.
No, I took my time, so I could
took the breaks and you took time to actually enjoy places you were visiting and pyramids and waterfalls and so on and so forth. So
I mean, look, there's so many beautiful things in Africa to go see. So I had a list of the main attractions I wanted to see. We'll say the Pyramids of Giza, the Victoria Falls. I was able to cycle past Mount Kilimanjaro. I wanted to see the Indian Ocean. I wanted to see the temples in Egypt. I wanted to see the Sahara Desert. I would say the Sassufe Dunes in Namibia, the Okavango Delta in Botswana, the Lake Malawi. There was just certain things in certain countries that I just didn't want to miss, and thankfully the route I was on took me very close to these. Now some of you had to do some small little detours, but for the most part they were along the pathway I was on, so it was nice like that. Because I mean, it's not like you're in Africa every year, every day, or anything like that. You know, these are kind of trips you do. I suppose. I mean, that cycle trip was obviously a once in a lifetime opportunity. Now, ideally, I want to travel to Africa more and more now throughout the rest of my life. But it's
you
not
got
as
the African bug. Now you need to come
that's
back.
the quote. Once Africa's in your blood, that's it. It'll never leave you.
I heard that many times.
It's contagious.
I even heard about a guy who went for like a long safari trip to Africa. Like you said, to get Africa out of my system.
Yeah.
And he says like,
Never
well,
worked.
it didn't work for me because 130 trips later, I'm still...
It's like this malaria. Once it's in you, that's it. It's injecting you for the rest of your life. So that's what Africa does to you. There's something about it.
Yeah. So Egypt was it was like a first country. So you didn't really... no, you said you had like your first breakdown. Really, it was in Egypt. Like,
yeah, I mean,
it kind of occurred to you, like, Donal, you're like, yeah, this is happening.
Yeah, it was more of I had a few cries in Egypt twice because I was leaving people, and then the other time, I think the third time it happened, I was just tired because I'd been on the bike for nearly 8 hours, and actually the police were right behind me, and they were getting on my nerves because they were kind of shouting at me to hurry on, and it was extremely windy. And
I was gonna ask because like especially, and again, I'm just trying to recall from your updates, and it was just unreal to read those updates and just see on Instagram and on Twitter what's going on. It was really good. Like initially you have a lot of kind of annoying encounters with police, which I kind of have with that one trip that I was in Africa. I also kind of witnessed that kind of checkpoints and so on and so forth. But initially, like in Egypt, they insisted on escorting you.
Yeah, so I suppose I'll make a bit of background. Egypt's it's a military state now, so the military are in complete control. General Sisi, since the revolutions, they overthrew, I suppose, a leader who was democratically elected, and they got rid of him after a year. So Sisi's been in charge since 2014-15. But they're extremely paranoid about tourists in their country.
Really? Egypt?
Yeah.
I thought that Egypt is like a tourist, is like a...
No, it is, but that's...
that's why.
Yeah, so they rely heavily on tourists, so that's why they're paranoid about their safety more than anything.
Okay.
So usually when a tourist goes to Egypt, everything's pre-booked. You book with a tour company, they have everything organised, their papers are in order.
Okay, so everything has to be sorted out up front, and
that
was where you made them feel uncomfortable.
Yes, of
What
course,
is this guy doing here? Nothing
me,
pre-booked with a bike.
Here comes me on a bicycle, and when they started questioning me as to where I was going, who I was staying with, why I was here, where I was going to be on X and such night, I just told them that I'm on a bicycle. I don't know. I could be in Sudan tomorrow, or I could be back in Cairo tomorrow. They just, as in, not that you're being a smart ass, but I just didn't know where I was going to be every night. Nothing was pre-booked, and they just didn't like those answers, of course. But I think, so look, long story short, a few weeks before I arrived into this place, a couple of other cyclists had passed through, and they were let go. Okay, they were let continue on. It just seems that some, we'll say, of these generals are more serious than others. So some turn a blind eye and they let you continue on. Others agree to an escort where they drive behind you. And then other times, such in my case, they absolutely firmly tell you that you are absolutely not cycling. So what they wanted me to do was to turn my bicycle around against the wind, and cycle back to Cairo,
right,
and organize my trip through a tour company and then to cycle back out to them with my papers in order. Now, I knew straight away that
That's not happening.
this was not a rule. I did not have to do this. So we just kind of stayed negotiating and in discussions and stuff like that. And
it was all in English. In
English, yeah. So anyways, again, long story short, I was with a Spanish guy who was also staying with my staff that the guy was staying with. Now, I hadn't planned to meet him or anything like that. He was just another cyclist. So he turned around and said, if this was going on all day now, this was evening time now, 3-4 o'clock in the afternoon, and this started at like, so we were with them 5, 6, 7 hours or something. So
just talking with him?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Just trying to negotiate, saying that we weren't going back to Cairo and that they wanted us to go back. But anyways, we basically said to them that they were ruining our experience of Egypt, which they didn't take too kindly. They got kind of upset then, and they were like, "Oh no," like very paranoid, like, "No, we don't want that to happen." And then Ruben, the Spanish guy, said, "Okay, well, leave us go." He was like, "There's a beach over there. We'll go along the beach." And the guy was like, "Stop, just go. Don't tell me no more." So
really,
yeah, and this led into trouble a few days later. So anyways, we took off on our bicycles, but in that same time, another guy who was helping me had spoken to the police on my behalf and got a promise off the chief of the police of the Red Sea Governorate where I was, that if I took a lift to Hurghada, which was 200 kilometers south, that I'd be let cycle after that. So I didn't have to go back to Cairo. I could continue if I took a lift for 200 kilometers.
Yes.
So I weighed up my options. And then he said that if the police catch me cycling on the way to Hurghada on the highway, that they would arrest me and bring me back to Cairo, and either I would be sent home to Ireland or sent back in a plane, or else that I'd have to organise the trip through a tour company. But he was like, worst case, you're going to be sent home out of the country for not obeying their orders. So I was like, this was day 2, so I was like, the whole trip could finish today if I just don't do what they tell me to do. And then I kind of just said, look, it's the second day, I have all of Africa to cycle. I can easily cycle 200 kilometers in another place where I won't be, I suppose, harassed by the police. So I hitched the lift, took the lift, and that was day 2. That was the excitement on day 2.
Wow.
But then a few days later, I got another phone call, and the police were looking for me because the official story that went up to the hierarchy. Now, the thing with the police in Egypt is that it's not just the ground force that are in control. This goes up to the generals, the military, and sometimes the government, depending on the seriousness of the situation. So a few days later, I get a phone call. Tomás, you don't have to tell me where you are, but it's probably in your best interest because the police are looking for you. So I told the guy who was on the phone to me where I was. He called the police, and then the police were supposed to come to the hotel I was staying at, but they never did. And I was kind of left alone until I got back into, we'll say, central Egypt, going along the Nile. So at this stage, I was at the coast, the Red Sea coast, and I went back onto the Nile again that the police picked me up again. But they just gave me escorts. Now, they did try get me to go into the Jeep so what they do is that when they escort you, they take you from checkpoint to checkpoint, but some checkpoints could only be 5 kilometers down the road, but they just don't want the hassle of having to look after you, because God forbid anything to happen to you while you're in their care.
Yeah.
So after the first run-in with the police, I just understood it from their point of view that they don't want to be looking after me, and I don't want them to look after me. I don't, I didn't feel...
You had them like a mutual understanding.
I didn't feel as if I was in danger, that I needed 2 policemen and then 4 other policemen in the back of the Jeep, all armed like military men, to be looking after me. But that's what happened. They'd insist on escorting me. This wasn't arranged. I didn't want it. They didn't want to do it, but it was just, they had to do it because they were given orders from above. He's on a bicycle. He's no protection. Give him protection. But I got on with them after that. Then I changed approach. Instead of complaining and trying to argue with them, I just had the fun with them, had the crack, made them laugh, made them feel at ease. Right. Told them I was very fast at cycling, and then they believed me, and we had good fun after that. And at the end of the day, they're just normal people doing their jobs, doing what they're told.
Yeah,
so.
They're probably equally annoyed by the whole situation as you were.
Who wants to drive behind the cyclist? Now, would have been one of the faster touring cyclists. I was able to hold, we'll say, 25 kilometers an hour on a fully loaded bike, which is quite quick.
Yeah.
Whereas other people could be doing 15 or something.
Oh my God.
So, but I mean, even doing 25 where I thought I was Superman riding as fast as I could, these guys are stuck driving behind me with other cars beeping at them because they're holding up traffic because of me. So you also kind of feel like a nuisance as well that,
Yeah.
you know, I'm here just wanting to enjoy myself riding my bicycle, but I have this police presence behind me, and then people are getting frustrated because obviously
Yeah.
the road isn't extremely wide, so sometimes you're holding up traffic. And then the other side of it as well was that the locals were too scared to talk to you because it was a military state. These people could get into trouble for talking or trying to help you.
Right.
So
Wow.
staying with local people was out of the question, because if I were to stay with a local person, they would have to sign all these different papers, let the police know, let the secret police know, let the military know that I was with them. Just again, God forbid if anything happened, and then if something bad happened to me, Egypt would get a bad name again. Because again, the perception of Africa, if a terrorist attack happens in Egypt, it's the end of the world.
That's
in
what
terms
that's
of
what
you can't go to Egypt
Yeah.
anymore; it's too dangerous.
Yeah.
But if a terrorist attack happened in London, no, it's okay, it's fine. We have all this under control. Or France and etc. So
yeah. Wow.
it's
So
frustrating.
Egypt was not fun.
I still enjoyed it. I mean, cycling with a police presence behind you, I mean, yeah, it was irritating at times, but other times you were just kind of like, this is like, you feel like importance.
Yeah.
These guys are behind you. Like,
Yeah,
even when I was out in the
you have
desert,
a number of armed men kind of watching after you.
I mean, it was totally ridiculous, but at the same time, you were just kind of like just giggling to yourself about the whole situation. Like,
Yeah.
it was only, we'll say, 10 days before that, I was at home in Ireland cycling around Slayhead, and you had no police, nobody would bat an eyelid at you. But now here you are in Egypt, and all the locals are waving at you, people are driving, and you'd actually, sometimes I was worried that they'd crash because the drivers would stick their head out the window so far to wave at you and say hello, that you think that they take their eyes off the road and that they were going to lose control or hit something in front of them. But even when I went through Aswan, which would have been the last major town between Egypt and the Sudanese border, so after Aswan there's another place called Abu Simbel, but it's a small town, but they have the famous Abu Simbel temple. But in between Aswan and Abu Simbel, it's 370 kilometers, and there's absolutely nothing out there. But even then, the police insisted on following me. Wow. So I remember one day I pulled into this abandoned building, and I just wanted to sit down and have lunch because I was getting hungry, and the sun was beaming down on top of me. It was nearly 40 degrees, and this poor policeman was driving behind me all day, and he'd no other choice but to do it because, again, he was given the orders.
Yeah.
And then here I was just sitting at this abandoned building, no civilization, this poor guy in the police car telling me to hurry up, because he was pretty rude now as well all day, because he was telling me to hurry on, because I wouldn't get in the car with him.
Okay.
Yeah, because I was just like, I'm
he
here
was
to
like,
cycle.
listen, get on the car and let's have it, have it past us. Like, let's
let's do 100 kilometers an hour, and I'll have you at wherever you want to go. And then eventually, by the end of the day, they just got so sick of me that they just drove off. Yeah. Because actually, now that I remember, I met another English guy cycling that day, and he had lost his transport. He had lost his police escort because, again, they just got fed up and drove off. But when I met him, I got up to him and I bought my escort to him.
Okay.
So anyways, as you do when you meet a fellow cyclist, so this guy was cycling from Egypt to Kenya, because he's been cycling in Africa over a number of years, but doing, we'll say, shorter trips, but he wanted to reconnect his lines. So he started from South Africa.
Oh, okay.
Did a trip in South Africa, and then anyways, he was reconnecting his lines. So I met him. Anyways, he was from England, so we got chatting away, and my police car was behind me. We were side by side for about nearly an hour, and then all of a sudden the wind just went crazy, and I was going a little bit faster, and I just wanted to finish a bit quicker so I could eat and relax. So I just gradually took off. Now, I didn't do... So when I was with him, we were doing, I think it was about 12 kilometers an hour, and I bumped the pace up to 15. But of course, over the next half an hour, I got in the gap and he was out of sight. But I noticed the police car obviously got stuck
behind him
with who to stay with. So they stayed behind him and not me. So anyways, fast forward another half an hour, 45 minutes. This police car was firing down the road in front of me, sirens full blast. And as soon as they saw me, they pulled it in front of me and blocked me off. And then they jumped out again, guns out. They jumped out. You try escape. You try escape. And I just kind of stood there. And now I was kind of weak from the hunger at this stage, but I just started laughing. And I just looked around and I was like, escape to where? I was like,
Yeah,
I'm doing 15 kilometers an hour. Like, I was like, you could literally give me a weak head start and you'd probably catch me in 2 days' time.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you escape. My colleague calls, you escape, you another cyclist. And I was like, I'm just going faster than him. But I was like, I'm not escaping anywhere. Like, I was like, I'm going to, I don't know where I was going to, but I was like, I'm just going straight down the road. I was like, I'm not going anywhere. And I was like, look around you. It's all sand.
Yeah.
So then I think he kind of put 2 and 2 together and
It
realized,
down on him like, yeah, actually.
maybe he's not actually going anywhere. And I was like, I was pale white at the stage. I was like, I'm from Ireland where it's very cold. I wouldn't last more than a day in that heat out there in the sand. I was like, there's no water, there's no food. I was like, you put me out there and I'm not going to survive out there. So then he kind of started laughing again, just having a crack with them, just making them feel at ease and not being cheeky, arguing with them. So,
wow.
yeah, and that really just summed up Egypt, just the bizarreness of it all, really.
Wow. Well, that's what it is in those police states or those kind of totalitarian, I don't know, for the want of a better word, states. This is like an absurdity and just like a regular folks stuck with it. And like you said, they were given orders, and
that's it. Yeah.
If all that was left, how it naturally played out, it probably played out much better than this, and they had to just stick to the.
But I'm kind of glad it happened as well, because at least it just kind of, it kept things interesting and you were kept entertained, because every day I got on the bike in Egypt, I was just like, what's going to happen today?
Right.
I mean, another time I met a cop called the Butcher, and he was telling me all about all these people he killed, and he was famous in Egypt, and he was showing me articles about him and how his girlfriend broke up with him, and at one stage he used to be skinny like me, but now he's kind of, wouldn't call him fat, but chubby, for want of a better word, because his girlfriend broke up and broke his heart, and he found himself eating ice cream and sweets and chocolate. Another time at teenagers, so they have these things called tuk-tuks, and it's usually teenagers driving them, and they're absolutely just ridiculous drivers. Anything from 8 onwards, really. But these guys in a tuk-tuk were driving on the other side of the road. As soon as they saw me on the bicycle, they drove onto my side. Then they drove at me, and one of them tried to hit me with a stick.
Oh, geez.
Later on that day, kids threw stones at me when I was passing over a bridge. So Egypt kept things interesting. But then, of course, you did the beauty side of it. You had, the lovely weather, the lovely local people, again, the drivers going crazy as soon as they saw you, trying to get your attention, waving at you. You had just the incredible history, the temples, the pyramids, and oh my God, it's just how the Egyptian people put these together centuries and centuries ago, and the fact that they're still standing, the fact that not graffiti, but the drawings on the walls are still there, and the color of them as well.
Yeah.
And then just the designs, and that they're still here, and it's just absolutely, it's a country I definitely want to go back to. Because you can get a 4-week visa.
You're gonna pre-book everything this time.
Yeah, pre-book everything this time. Just to be on the safe side and not to, I suppose, attract the law onto you as well.
Yeah. Can you pull that a little bit closer to you?
Sorry,
yeah, perfect. Okay, so that's Egypt, and then you get to the border with Sudan.
Yeah.
Okay. Did we miss anything in Egypt?
After that, Abu Simbel got the boat across the Lake Nasser, which is the
I just don't want to miss anything, that you would like to specifically talk about.
No, that was kind of the end of Egypt then.
And so then you go to Sudan. Now tell me about Sudan, because like somehow in my head it's like that Sudan is place where horrible things happen, and it's really dangerous, and was that your experience with Sudan?
Not my experience, but I mean, Sudan is for me it's easily the my favorite country in the whole world, country.
Right.
I loved Sudan, absolutely loved it. But some horrible things have happened in Sudan. You go to the Darfur region in West Sudan, the atrocities the government have committed there is just sickening. You go to South Sudan where they've had a brutal civil war, which is now separate from the Republic of Sudan. But South Sudan is Christian majority. Sudan itself is Muslim. So there was atrocities committed there, and that's why South Sudan eventually got fed up and broke away. But now they're in civil war since 2013. So yeah, it's a complex. It's what's happened in Sudan has just been extremely sad because they've just the local people just don't have it easy. But my God, they would almost take the skin off their back and help you if they had to. They are just the kindest souls I've ever met in my life, and I just absolutely just fell in love with the country. And if I didn't have to go, if Cape Town wasn't the goal, I'd have happily have just remained in Sudan. It's a country, although it's in a bit of anarchy now at the moment again. I do want to go back. I have friends in Sudan who I'm actually very worried about at the moment because I can't get through to them because there's an internet blackout.
Wow.
At the moment. There's lots of protests going on. The people want power brought back to the people because they've had a brutal dictatorship since 1989. He's gone and he's been replaced with the guy who committed all the atrocities in West Sudan in the Darfur region. So it's pretty crazy what's going on
It's always
at the moment.
like you have a one asshole and then the another comes after.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a pity. But hopefully power will be brought back to the people. But I mean, at the moment, it's not looking good. But easily my favorite country of Africa. Loved it. Started off in Sudan, you're straight into the Sahara Desert, which was extremely challenging. Had a few breakdowns there. I think I spent about 10 to 12 days getting through the desert as I made my way towards Khartoum. But again, I mean, I was cycling by myself. But luckily enough, there was these truck stops at the end of every day where I just pitch up and sleep.
You had your tent with you?
Yeah, so sometimes I'd use my tent. Other times they had these cot beds and I just throw my tent cover on it. And I just sleep with the locals in these cot beds.
Right.
We all had single cot beds, but you're in a room with all the locals, and not once did I ever fear for myself, for my safety, for my gear, for my belongings, for my bicycle. Not once did anybody ever try to take anything off me. And don't want to sound cheeky or disrespectful for anything, but the belongings I had would have been worth a lot of money to them. But again, they didn't even consider taking anything off me. They were just the nicest people that you'd ever meet in your life. And I had great times with them. Very welcoming people, always there to help you. So at these truck stops, if I was sitting by myself and a group of men, it was always men. That's another thing. I suppose that's one of the not so nice things about these Muslim countries is their attitude towards women and kind of, I suppose, the role of women in their societies. But so you'd have a group of men sitting down, and the thing with these Muslim countries is everybody eats together, everybody shares. So you'd have them on a mat, and they might have, we'll say, 10 dishes in front of them, and they're all just eating together, and they'd see me sitting by myself, and they'd all stop eating, and they'd insist I come over. And you know the way us Irish people are, you're like, oh, no, I'm fine, I'm grand. Although you did want to go over to them. But they wouldn't take no for an answer. So one of them would eventually they'd come over and essentially just drag you over to them, and they'd sit you down, and they'd keep pushing food in front of you, and it didn't matter. And then once you were finished, they'd order more food. Right. So they'd keep feeding you. And then after that, you'd the traditional chai, the tea. They'd bring you tea. And then sometimes they'd have watermelon, or else somebody would have snuck off without you knowing, and they'd come back with maybe a juice or a small cake or a chocolate bar or something like that. And they wouldn't take any money for it. So you try pay them because it was just what we do here at home.
Just to be okay.
Yeah, but they absolutely wouldn't take any money off you. And do you know, the Sudanese currency is very weak at the moment. So again, not wanting to sound disrespectful, but for me, this was pennies, because Sudan's a very cheap country, so you
Yeah.
could get tea for like 5 or 10 cents or something.
Yeah.
Whereas here,
Wow.
it's you'd get a cup of tea and they'd charge you €2 for the bloody tea bag. Never mind getting a pot of tea or anything.
Yeah.
And absolutely, they wouldn't take any money off you. They wouldn't do it for profit. They wouldn't do it because we'll be speaking about Ethiopia next, but Ethiopia was the opposite. Then in most places, they'd overcharge you because of your skin color. But in Sudan, absolutely,
That's
they'd
interesting.
be disgusted if you offered them money. So
Yeah.
after a while, I
You
wouldn't
s- you
offer
s-
them.
you
I'd
stopped
stop
it.
because they just didn't like it. Because they thought that they thought that you thought that they were doing it so that they'd make money off you, and that was absolutely not the case.
Wow.
Even some places, they'd refuse to take money off you to eat.
Wow.
Do you know? Because usually, like the first day actually in the desert, the first day I had a bit of a breakdown. Couldn't stop crying, and I had about 95 kilometers in by 12:30 in just before lunchtime, and I stopped. I found a truck stop, and I just didn't want to keep cycling because I just wasn't in the head of space to keep going, and there wasn't anything out there anyways. So I stopped in at this truck stop, and lovely guys who ran it, and I just felt at home with them, and just my mood improved as the day went on. These two guys who were working there just chatted away to me. They'd come and they'd go, and then more and more people were coming as the day went on, so people would stop in to eat, and you get chatting to other people.
Wow.
And eventually, I suppose I'd ate so much food during the day and drank so much because there just wasn't any. You're in the middle of a desert.
Yeah.
You know, you're just kind of sitting down, wandering around, quizzing them about their life and stuff. And then I think eventually they just didn't charge me for anything. Would say if I had breakfast or the next day, and they wouldn't charge me for it.
Wow.
Yeah, and just again, just out of the goodness of their hearts, and they gave me a juice going away or a can of Coke or something, and they said, "That's for your journey. Best of luck with you." And
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Wow. So then Sudan was like that.
Yep, the whole way through.
So I remember from the last time when we spoke on the previous podcast, one thing stuck with me that you said, that it is surprising how little you need to live, and on those trips you kind of realize how little you need. And I guess when I hear what you're saying right now, is like it's surely one thing that you need is food, and it must be very touching to feel that those people are offering you food, like one of the few things that you really need in your life, and they're kind of understand that. Probably that's why they doing that. It must be kind of very encouraging for kind of like the
absolutely.
For how to say it, for believing in humankind, right? It's like, there are good people, like genuinely good
absolutely, yeah. I mean, just like I said, that day I was struggling that day, but then by that evening you're just full of life again, because again, like I was struggling just for small reasons, missing home, feeling irrelevant, lonely in this desert, and then you're kind of thinking, well, these guys are out here all the time just trying to make a living. And that was it. And you kind of just appreciate that then, that they're hardworking people, and that I suppose
they have a tough life.
And they'd have much bigger problems than you did, and that they were dishonest. They were not dishonest, sorry, that they were dishonest, that they were so honest that here they were, and I mean, look, they obviously do enough to make a living, but here they were handing out free food to this foreigner who I suppose didn't need free food handed out to him. Who could easily have paid for it, and obviously willing to pay for it, but again, they wouldn't take money for it. They just wanted to help, and that was it. They just wanted to play a part in your journey, no matter how small or big that part was. And it was just touching, and you think, and then when you had low moments after that they're moments you think of then, being like, okay, I don't feel good right now, but look at all the good things that have happened, all the people you've met, all the generosity you've received. And that was kind of another reason why I wanted to get to Cape Town, was that I suppose obviously most of these people wouldn't know if I finished or not, because it was just a passing
Yeah.
You know, you're just meeting them as you pass through, and granted, some got your number if you spent long enough with them and they wanted to keep in touch, but others you might just have a sit down and have a quick chat and you're gone again. But even in just my own head, that I knew that I finished the trip kind of for them as well, that you know, they wanted to play a part in me getting to Cape Town. They played the part, and I kind of played the part in, just to keep going, and I kind of played the part in getting to Cape Town. And
that's amazing. Amazing. So Sudan overall was much better experience than Egypt, I take from what you're saying.
I suppose less stressful. Equally as interesting in other ways, but I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy Egypt, but it was just you know, it was just.
But if you're
on the go all the time,
if you had to take a time machine and redo Egypt or Sudan, I presume
Sudan.
You would do Sudan.
Yeah.
That's what
I have an awful soft spot for Sudan.
Yeah.
But then you go into Ethiopia, and it was like going from heaven to hell.
Okay, so next one is Ethiopia.
Ethiopia, yeah. Look, beautiful country, beautiful coffee. Most people were very, very nice.
What about these stone throwers in Ethiopia?
Yeah,
it was like,
nobody knows.
I felt like, again, from your updates that the main theme in Ethiopia was people throwing stones at you.
Yeah, both kids and adults. But I mean, nobody understands. There's so many different reasons given. The parents throw stones at the kids to get their attention for dinner if they misbehave. The people are bored. The country's never been colonized officially before. Granted, Italy invaded them in the 1930s for a few years. They're very territorial. There's 94 different ethnic groups in Ethiopia, and a lot of them argue with each other. They don't get on.
That's why the conflict is right now.
Yeah.
Exactly this.
Yeah. Well, there seems to be constant conflict there, but we only hear when things explode.
Yeah.
Now, like, again, I was there when there was conflict in the north, and that one didn't hit mainstream news because it was small conflict, but it was still people were dying. But then the conflict in the south, while I was still there as well, that hit mainstream news because that went out of control, and they reckon it was the worst ethnic conflict they've ever seen in Ethiopia, or in recent memory at least, anyways, I suppose.
Wow.
But then, you just have... But then people throw stones because you're white, because you're foreign, because you don't give them attention. It's just a million and one different reasons. Nobody can pinpoint it.
Right. So that was not like a one thing that they...
No, I think...
Because it was just their way of expressing whatever was on their mind at the moment.
Yeah, I think so. I mean... Okay, the first few days, because of the ethnic conflict, they were the quietest days I probably had in most of Africa, bar the desert stretches, because there was ethnic conflict. People were confined to their villages. The thing with Ethiopia is people don't drive because there's like a 200% tax on cars. It's ridiculous. So cars are extremely expensive. So only the wealthier people have cars. So in the countryside, very few people have cars. So everybody walks. You walk to your village, you walk to the next village, you walk to towns. Another thing with Ethiopia is there is, I think, 100 million people living there right now. So, and it's a big country, but it's not like a gigantic country. So there's people everywhere.
Right. Density, high density.
Yeah. So there's people absolutely everywhere. And of course, because they're walking, they're everywhere. So you couldn't take a pee without somebody seeing you at the side of the road. Like, I mean, it was just crazy how much people were there. But the first few days they weren't, because they were confined to the towns and villages. Now the thing with the villages is it only happened in a couple of occasions where people would throw stones, mostly kids. But it was more so in the countryside. Because I think the thing with the countryside as well is people could run away quicker and escape quicker and hide quicker. Whereas in the villages, you're running into somebody's house or into your own house, so you could easily run to the house as well because you know where they went. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, look, some adults would throw stones as well, and the only thing you could do was stop and kind of confront them.
Oh, really?
And yeah, now thankfully it never got aggressive, and I wouldn't let it get aggressive. I mean, I'd stop and say something like, if you throw that stone, I'll bait the head off you. Anything like that. But you wouldn't do it. But you just kind of threaten them and they'd drop the stone. But they couldn't understand you anyways. But once that you came across as if you were looking angry, they'd kind of leave you alone then. Because I think the thing is, they don't expect you to stop. So usually you get stoned at your back.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Because they would wait for you to pass. I think a lot of the time they were just looking for attention. Just nobody knows, because I mean I've heard of some horrific stories that not so long after I passed through, a French guy had a stone hit off his head. Now, for some reason, he wasn't wearing a helmet, which is probably the stupidest thing you could do in Ethiopia. So he wasn't wearing a helmet, so he got a stone thrown from from above him, cracked open his head.
Oh, jeez.
Another French guy. Oh, excuse me. Sorry, another French guy got stabbed in the back. Again, kind of his own fault. Somehow, he caught the kid who threw a stone at him and wouldn't let go and walked the kid back into the village, and confronted the whole village about the kid. And then some guy, after a while, came up and stabbed him in the back. Another guy had a stick thrown into his spokes, so he went front flip over the bike, smashed his full front face. Even recently enough, another guy, again, I don't know why he was doing it, he had one flag of a certain region, went into the next region with the same flag, into like the rival region, and some guy who got drunk hit him with a stick a few times. So you're just kind of like, common sense, like, just don't do anything that'll attract attention. You're not going to...
As if you're not attracting enough attention already.
Exactly. It's not like you're going to go down...
cycling.
Yeah. It's not like you're going to go down the Falls Road up in Belfast with a Union Jack and playing God Save the Queen on your mobile phone and speakers. I mean, you're asking for trouble. Yeah. Do you know? It's like... It's anything like that, you know? You're just going to ask for trouble. If you go out of your way to upset people, you're going to upset people, and that's what happened. But again, most of the people in Ethiopia, I don't want to diss the country completely, most of the people were fine. Another thing that kind of, I suppose, got on my nerves and other people's nerves as well is they'd always overcharge you. People would see you as a walking ATM machine. They'd give you a price, and when you left the following day, they'd up the price again. They took advantage of you.
Because they know you have no choice.
Yeah, that you pay for it. But even something small like, we were looking for duct tape one day and they wanted $40 for the duct tape. And it was just like, they make it blatant obvious and stuff like that. So, but that was more so in the towns than the countryside.
Yeah. So how was it? Was it like, on one end, it seems like you would be trying to get as quickly as possible past that, hostile environment, and I'm using word hostile because people throwing stones at you, but at the same time that was over a number of days, so you had to stop somewhere and interact with people. And like, how did that work out? Because you would think, like, when you're gonna stop you, they're gonna just throw more stones at you, and you're nothing gonna...
Yeah. So you'd stay... So Ethiopia, it's very difficult to wild camp. So I didn't even try, because again, there's too many people, and you just don't know what they're going to do if they find you wild camping. Yeah. So I used to just stay in the villages or towns where you'd find accommodation, and you kind of just... Once you were in a village and towns, you were kind of safer, because, I don't know, like, they weren't going to hurt you. That's one thing as well. Despite the fact that they were throwing stones, I never felt that anybody was actually physically going to hurt me. So you felt reasonably safe as well. So once you kind of got into the towns, villages, you find a place to stay, you get chatting to local people. And I suppose, in a way, some cyclists would kind of sneak in, find a place to stay and shut up shop and just keep to themselves for the night. But I kind of adopted the approach where the more people I spoke to, the better, because then everybody would know you were around.
Yes.
So then,
it's very smart.
If anything happened, they'd say, oh, John was speaking to him, or Mike was speaking to him, or whatever the local guy was. So, and then again, because you were cycling, because you were white, because you were this novelty, word would spread anyways, and everybody would know that you were in a village. Because for some villages, it was excitement for them that, we have this Mzungu staying with us, you know, and they'd just meet and greet you and make sure you're, again, like I said earlier, make sure you're doing okay. So the village and towns, I just go out and mix. You might have a couple of beers, have a bit of food. You had to eat, and a lot of these places you'd stay didn't do food, so you'd take a walk around the village, and usually I'd go for the busy local spots, because the more people, the more, again, not that I was extremely paranoid, but it's just common sense. The more people, the more witnesses. So
exactly.
Again, if
common
anything
sense is a great... And
so
was
it's
it,
street smartness. So after a while, like, I was ripped off a couple of times in Egypt, and you get cute. Again, you need these things to happen to you, because you just need to learn from your mistakes. So you'd get ripped off at a hotel, or you get ripped off at a place you went. And eventually I kind of got the courage to say, no, that's not right. You said it was $5. Why are you charging me $10? And again, even though it's only $5, it's just the fact that it's the principle of them ripping you off. Like, we've a B&B at home, and we've a pub, and we do food. I wouldn't charge somebody more because they were of a certain type, or a certain skin color, or a certain race or religion, or a certain nationality, or that they were wealthy people. You charge everybody the same thing.
Yeah.
But Ethiopia, it was different. It was just, you were white, they'd overcharge you. And they'd openly admit it. You know, they'd say, it's because you're a foreigner, that's why we're charging you more, because you can pay it. And then another thing I used to do was, when I got into whatever B&B or lodge I found to stay in, I'd ask for the lodge book, because kind of by law you'd have to sign in your name, your details, and at the end they'd ask you how much you paid. So if I felt that they were ripping me off, I'd say, well, he paid this much, so either I pay you that much or I'm not staying here. So you kind of had to get tough with them as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Because, I mean, for me, it was a long trip. It was,
Yeah.
I knew I was going to be there for at least 6 months by the time I was in Ethiopia. So I was like, if I keep being ripped off here, they're just taking me for a fool, and this can keep happening. I'm just going to be bleeding money that by the end of the trip, I might be wishing I was like, oh, do you know what? I spent an extra $500 in Ethiopia because I was being ripped off all the time.
Yes.
Do you know, it all adds up at the end of the day. It's $5 one day, and it could be for lunch as well, where it could be another $5 they try to rip you off. That's $10 by the end of the day. Yeah. And again, it all adds up.
Wow. Okay. So
you got to be cute. You got to be a bit cute as well.
Yeah. So that's Ethiopia.
Yeah. So after Ethiopia, there was ethnic conflict. So I flew to Uganda.
Oh, okay. So that was it. That at some point in Ethiopia, I said like, okay, no, I'm not continuing. It's too dangerous, and you took a plane.
Yeah. So basically, in a nutshell, there was ethnic conflict in the south, and reports were coming out that people were dying, people were dead, people were being shot dead. And that you could see bodies at the side of the road. And I was just like, I didn't come here to see dead bodies at the side of the road. I don't mind dodging stones, but I'm not going down there dodging bullets from AK-47s.
Excuse me the interruption. It's been over an hour already, and we're only halfway through. So I decided to split that podcast into 2 parts. If you're enjoying it so far, please rate that podcast on the platform that you're listening to it right now. And tune in next week for another part, second and the final part, where I talk with Tom about his great adventure.